Imagine the way Arizona looked in the 20th century. No cranes, no stoplights. Bustling beyond the documented black and white.
People kept saying there was no history here.
But Marshall Shore sees history in color.
I'm known as Arizona's hip historian.
Also known as a local celebrity.
So I want to welcome you to Arizona History Happy Hour.
One of Marshall's friends, Erica Kepler, watched his audience skyrocket and said it's for a good reason.
Oh, Marshall is always a lot of fun, a great sense of humor, a great guy to engage with.
This place is just amazing.
He likes to say that he isn't a numbers or dates-based historian.
I'm a story person.
And we saw that when he introduced us to the Buckhorn Baths Motel in Mesa.
Luckily, we are standing right here in front of, I think, one of the most amazing signs in all of Arizona.
Established in 1939, Marshall says the Buckhorn was a huge part of Cactus League history, with guests like Ty Cobb and Willie Mays.
They basically moved spring training closer to them so that way they could leave the Buckhorn and go right to spring training, thereby creating the Cactus League. And so that's how we got so much baseball here. This is where like Ty Cobb would have been playing catch.
Marshall moved to the Valley 20 years ago. He's a former Phoenix librarian who left the libraries to talk about history that isn't necessarily covered in textbooks.
In a quarter of a mile, turn left onto Grant Street.
This was initially the segregated Afro-American high school.
The Phoenix Union Colored High School opened in 1926.
So folks from across the valley would have to come here.
Now it's the George Washington Carver Museum, and Marshall remembers the people who defined the school's success.
An alumni here was Charles Harrison, who became an industrial designer. And so he was the first African-American designer with Sears. I love the fact that this piece of history is still here so we can talk about it.
He won't let it get left behind.
He doesn't simply study history, he's actually trying to make a significant mark in it.
And Marshall made his footprint in history at Greenwood Cemetery in Phoenix, a lawn that celebrates the people who defined Arizona.
You can tell a lot about a city by going and visiting its cemetery and seeing its history.
To Marshall, each stone in Greenwood Cemetery represents a life with a story to share. But in the case of Nikolai DeRaylen, it was the absence of a headstone that made it so significant.
It's a really amazing story.
Nikolai DeRaylen visited Arizona to treat his tuberculosis.
It didn't go so well for him. He wound up passing away a few months later.
He left behind mounds of wealth and his beloved wife, Anna.
As they're ready for burial, they discovered that Nikolai was a woman. And so when they buried him here in Greenwood in 1906, they actually buried him in a dress and without a headstone.
Erica, who is also the founder of Arizona Trans Alliance, says his story is remarkable.
It really does say here's a person who managed to live a life with a tremendous secret that would have undoubtedly destroyed his life.
Nikolai had enough money to afford a traditional burial, but Marshall explained that his unmarked grave was a sign of disrespect.
Without a headstone, he was erased from time.
Then came an idea.
When I found out that we had a gender pioneer right here in Arizona from 1906, I started working with the local community to raise funds to get him a headstone.
It was really through his invitation I became a part of it.
They capitalized efforts through social media and word of mouth.
Going to bars and people giving money here, giving money there.
In 2 years, they raised over $3,000, but the question remained, what should it say?
It was my opinion that what we put on the headstone shouldn't be outing, should not out him as trans.
My friend Erica came up with this quote and I was like, oh my God, that is perfect.
A quote that speaks truth to Nikolai and the entire transgender community.
To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment.
Now the headstone stands among the masses, securing Nikolai's spot in Arizona's LGBTQ history.
So that's one of the things I try to give those marginalized communities a voice.
A contribution that also writes Marshall into Arizona's story. In Phoenix, Caitlin Keenahan, Cronkite News.